Hey there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a bunch of backgrounds I'm making. I am using alcohol inks along with 91% isopropyl alcohol that you can get at most drugstores. I found that at Walmart, and I'm using Yupo paper and plenty of just different things. So we're going to go along and I'll talk about each of the things I'm using. I'm starting off with some Yupo paper, and I am going to use the colors Bottle Green and Citrus. And these are Ranger alcohol inks, and I'm also using a mixative. I'm using the gold mixative here, and I have my isopropyl alcohol in just a little glass eyedropper, and I'm also using a marker spritzer to move that around. I was inspired by Jessica Frost Ballas. I watched her on Instagram do a live, and I was just inspired by what she was doing, and I thought I would try, not necessarily to mimic what she was doing, but I wanted to try some different techniques. It was just really inspiring, and I wanted to pull out my alcohol inks and, you know, any excuse I get to pull them out. So all I'm doing is I am putting down a lot of color, and I'm trying to use sparingly the mixative, and then I am using my alcohol and I'm rounding that around the area that I'm putting down my alcohol ink along with my mixative. I found that this gold mixative tends to take over, and so I'm going to have to try and, I'm going to play around with it a lot more, but so far I haven't been super excited about how it just sort of takes over the color, which is why I'm putting down color here and not the mixative as well. And so I'll just keep going back and forth and doing exactly what I'm showing you here. And I'm being pretty generous with the isopropyl alcohol. You could use the alcohol ink solution, and that's by Ranger as well, and it works great. I have just found that because I'm using so much, that the isopropyl alcohol is just a little bit more economical, which is why I've chosen to do that. I'm trying to get some veining here. This is what I'm trying to do, and this is where the marker spritzer is really good for trying to have a little bit more control. As I said, I will show you a few different backgrounds I make using some different techniques. I even try to use a hairdryer, big fail, but I do try to use a hairdryer just to see. I'm going to keep looking, see if I can find something that maybe doesn't blow as much air, but for now, the marker spritzer is working really well. I also like to use my air compressor along with my Copic attachment to it, but I didn't do that in this video. I just decided to use just a few other items, or a few other ways. One of the things about the Copic adapter on my air compressor is that it does tend to give a lot of splatters. I don't know, that's not necessarily the word I'm looking for. It really veins it out. So there are tiny little branches, more or less, of the color. And I wanted this to be a lot more, I don't know, more rounded, less harsh lines, although I don't mind the harsh lines and I really like the veining. So that's what I'm going for here. So I'll just keep going, and I have no plans for these backgrounds as I'm making these. I just decided on colors by looking at my swatch book, and I pulled out a couple colors, and that's how I decided to use these. And I thought, well, if I decide to make some St. Patrick's Day cards, this would be really nice. You can tap your color on, you can put it in blobs, you can do whatever, and you know you're never going to get the same thing. That is the interesting part about these alcohol inks. And I decided I didn't want to fill up the whole paper, but I am very generous with my color and trying to be very sparing with my mixative. But like I said, that gold tends to sort of take over the color and not move as well. So I'll just keep working that color. I should mention that you definitely want to use your alcohol inks in a very well ventilated area. Open a window, get a fan going, something, because you may not realize it, but it will affect you. And you cannot feel it right away, but it can happen. I have had it happen. So I actually purchased a mask, and I'll show you here in a little bit my mask, what it looks like, and I'll show you the packaging. And I really liked using it. I will say that you know, you just need to find something that works for you. So I'm taking one of the synthetic Ranger brushes that, you know, they market for alcohol inks, and I'm just sticking that inside my isopropyl alcohol, and I'm even dabbing some of the color onto my paintbrush, and I'm just splattering that. Be careful when you splatter because you will get it everywhere. Ask me how I know. I did get a bit of green. I got a little aggressive here, and so I did get some green in areas I didn't necessarily want it, but it's okay. So you'll definitely want to use a synthetic brush because that alcohol will ruin a regular brush, and I think that's specifically why I bought these paint brushes, because they were marketed for it. I'm sure you could find other brushes that would work as well. So it's not completely dry, but I love how this background turned out. I think it's so pretty. And I'm working on my glass mat. I should mention that as well. And by working on my glass mat, it's very easy to clean up just with water or some of the alcohol. So this is the packaging. I cannot pronounce it. This is the packaging for the mask that I have, and it just goes over my ears. And I do wear glasses, so I have to put my glasses down on my nose a little bit, otherwise my glasses will fog up using this mask. And I did buy a hair dryer. This was a super cheap hair dryer, and I will show you how it does not work for this. I was going to use the cool setting, but there is no low setting. So, yeah, this hair dryer will end up just being a travel hair dryer. It will be perfect for that. I will list it down below if you're looking for a travel hair dryer, but this is not something you'd want to use to move around your alcohol inks. And so I did grab my heat gun. Now, I don't recommend this necessarily either, not on Yupo paper, because it will warp it. I did have some warping on this particular piece, and but again, I was using my mask. And like I said, you definitely want to have some ventilation, use a mask, do something. And I will say that I didn't have any adverse effects by using the mask. I have used my heat gun other times on Vellum, and I wasn't using a mask, and the next day I felt like I had a sore throat, and I just didn't feel right. So I will say that it's not something you're going to feel right away. You might think, oh, I'm fine, but definitely use either a mask, that well-ventilated area, something to that degree. This is why I want to look for a hairdryer that has a low setting. I don't want to spend a lot of money on it, of course, but use a low setting. Now you can tell by using this heat gun that I'm getting a very different look than by using the hand spritzer, the marker spritzer. And it's beautiful. I do like this look, but it's very, very different. And you have a lot less control with something like this. So I do compare the two. I will show you what they both look like next to each other, and they're both just different. But I guess it's all personal preference, what you like the best. I don't like how that gold was just kind of sticking in the middle. So now I'm going to move on to using some other colors. This I'm using is Purple Twilight and Wild Plum. And I'm going to go about this the same way. So and Gunmetal is the mixative that I'm using. I have sped this up about 4 times because, I mean, it's the same thing I'm doing as I did before, just using different colors and using a different mixative. And I will say that the gunmetal, this reacted pretty much the same way that the gold did. It sort of took over in areas. And I don't know, maybe if it's just my bottles or if it's something that maybe I should spritz into my tray, my alcohol ink tray that I have there on the right-hand side. And then I could use something even smaller to get that out, like maybe a little piping or a pipette. One of those plastic pipettes might work. But I found that even though I'm using small amounts of it, it just tends to take over the color. So I have a lot of that pooled up there in the middle, and you'll see that I'm just trying to add more color and see if that will move things. And I've also noticed that once it's down, whereas with the regular alcohol inks, you can get the color to move again by using the isopropyl alcohol, but the mixative doesn't move as much. Once it's down and it's dry, it's down, mostly. You might get it to move a little bit, but not a whole lot. So I'm going to keep going with this until I'm happy with that background. And I'll splatter it as well, and I'll use my paintbrush and splatter the alcohol. I love the little cells you end up getting by splattering. And just splattering some of that gunmetal on there as well. I love how that one turned out. It's a beautiful background. So then I'll use those same colors. I'm just going to try and do this a little bit differently by spreading the color all over and isopropyl alcohol all over as well. Thinking maybe you might be able to save a little time and using the heat gun. And I do like on the far edges where it pushes the color. I love that look. I think that look is absolutely beautiful. But where I initially put the color down, I'm not very fond of. It almost looks like a smoky effect on those very edges, those tips, where the air has really pushed that color into the alcohol as well. But it's the center that I'm not super excited about. So I just keep working it, seeing if I can get that color to move a little bit more. Trying to give my heat gun a little bit more of a chance. But once again, I'm on Yupo paper, which is a plastic paper, and there will end up being some warping. So you do have to be careful with that. And I have so much color because I've used so much alcohol, so much color on my glass mat that I decided to stick the paper down onto the glass mat and pick some of that paper up. And that gives you a completely different effect as well. Not one that I'm super, I don't know, I don't love it. But I didn't want to waste the color either. So once again, you have a background like this compared to the other background where you had a lot more control. And now I've moved on to some heavyweight vellum, and I chose the colors Butterscotch and Sunshine Yellow, which Butterscotch was a little bit deeper, but it was really hard to tell between the two. And once again, I used the gold mixative, which took over once again. And here I decided, instead of trying to do one little color at a time, I put a lot of alcohol down, and then I put a lot of the ink down, and just kind of tried to spritz that around. But I'm not super fond of this background. So I will end up just doing the same thing, picking up some of that color, and then I'll set that off to the side to dry. And I do end up using it. I add different colors to the top of it. I don't show you in this video, but I do end up making a card that you'll see at the end of this video. So I decided to try my old additive of just a little bit at a time. Well, a little more than normal, but a little bit at a time. I really like working on the heavyweight vellum. It's such a pretty look, and unlike regular vellum, most of the time, at least I haven't had an issue with my adhesive showing through. Now, I typically use like a liquid glue. I don't use foam tape on the back of this. I'm sure if you used foam tape, you'd see the strips. But the liquid glue I didn't seem to have a problem with by adhering these to backgrounds or to card bases. So I'm just going back and forth with that Butterscotch and Sunshine Yellow, trying to get those to move around a little bit. And again, I just wanted to play. I didn't have any, design in mind when it came to like, I'm going to use this for this particular card. I just didn't have any design in mind. I just wanted to play. So I would highly encourage you to just play. If you have alcohol inks, just give them a try. Just sit down, play with them, come up with some backgrounds. You can think of your card patterns later. But for now, just play. There is so much therapy in just playing. Like coloring, this I feel like is right up in there with that. And I sat here for probably 2 hours just playing, and oh my gosh, I had so much fun. Just trying different techniques, trying different colors. And I didn't even go too crazy by trying the colors. I just stuck with mostly the same color families. So I can imagine if I sat down and tried to use different colors, how much fun I'd have with that too. And I do like the look of not completely covering the paper. I will do a background here in a bit where I do cover the paper completely. But I do like this look where I have got some of the vellum just showing. But once again, that gold really does take over. So I like how that one turned out. Now I'm going to move on to some blues. I have sped this up about 4 times, and I am going to cover the background completely with this. I'm using the colors Aquamarine, and I believe it might be turquoise or stream. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't write it down as I was doing it, but you really can't go wrong with any of those colors. So I'm just going to keep working it, and I discovered that the silver veins so much better than the gold or the gunmetal or even the rose gold. I do end up using the rose gold on a background that I don't show you that I make, but this silver was like, oh, I love how it ended up just kind of working along the edges and veining. I thought it was so pretty. So I would have to say that the silver is probably my favorite of these Ranger mixatives. And not because of the color per se, but just how it cooperates, at least my bottle. Just so happy with how that worked. So I'm just going to keep working the color in there. And these are the exact same colors that I use over the top of that one yellow background that I wasn't happy with. Thinking maybe I could get some greens, and I think I do eventually, but this would make such a pretty like ocean background for if you had some ocean themed stamps that you wanted to use. But yes, I'm loving how that silver works. You're going to see that a lot more in the future for sure. And I love how that turned out. So pretty. So I wanted to show you what I did with some of those alcohol inked backgrounds. They were so much fun to make, but there was a purpose to making them, so I wanted to make some cards out of it. Oops, so let me just show you a couple of the cards that I made using them. And I'll show you the products that I used as well. So I saved one of the green backgrounds because I have other plans for it, but this is the one that I used where I started to try and use the heat. Obviously heat isn't such a great idea on Yupo paper, so that did not work so well, and trying to get that to stay down, I did use some score tape and I got it to stay down as best I could, but it has definitely worked. I also used a couple different things. This set from Simon Says Stamp, this one is called Playful Messages. I love it. That's where I got the I Think I'll Keep You. But the You to Best is the die from Simon Says Stamp. It's a Kathy Zilski, You to Best. And that's 2 dies. Anyway, so those are what I used for this, along with some Nouveau crystal drops in gold. And I think this turned out to be a really fun background. That's some vellum in the background, and I also just used some gold glitter paper. So that's what I used for that one. This next one, I used one of the purple backgrounds. This was my favorite purple background, so I definitely wanted the purple to show a lot, the purple and the pink. And so I used a couple different products with this as well. I used this Sentiment, Sending Comforting Hugs, and this one comes from the Handwritten Floral Greetings from Simon Says Stamp. And then I also used the Fresh Daisies die. I cut that out twice. One is with a regular cardstock, as another is a little bit of a glimmer cardstock. And then popped that up on foam tape. So that was that one. And then the other purple background I wasn't as fond of. This one was one I tried to use the hairdryer with, and it just blew it everywhere, so I wasn't really that fond of that one. So I decided that I wanted it to still show, but I covered it up mostly by using this die, the Floral Dot Collage. I cut that out, and it just makes a small portion in a piece, so I cut that down even more. I did stamp the background using a background stamp. That background stamp was this 6x6 stamp set called Modern Rose Blooms. So I used that for the background. I used this die, and then I used this set called Emphatic. I keep doing that. Emphatic. Every time I've used that, I do this. And this is another Kathy Zilski set, so I just used the Thank You, Your Awesomeness is Boundless. And then I also used some more Nouveau crystal drops. This is a corner chomper that I used here. For the next one, and I don't know if I'm even doing these in any sort of order, this was the yellow background that I used with a little bit of the, I forget which gold that was or which mixative, but I decided to color a background, or color a stamp, and this one once again uses the Handwritten Floral Greetings, and that says thank you for thinking of me. I just stamped and then Copic colored these, and then I fussy cut right up along the line and then stuck those down with some foam tape. And this was on the vellum, so I really like how that one turned out. I thought that one was beautiful. All right, and then we have, I used one of the blue backgrounds. I didn't use the other one. I'm saving that for something else. And I wanted a lot of that background to show because I just thought that was so much fun. So I used the Dude, and I also used, once again, Playful Messages just because this is such a fun set. I miss your face, dude, I miss your face. We call my son Dude, so that's where it's kind of fitting. And what I did is I stamped it out with, or I cut it out with black, and then I used some Versamark ink on it a few times along with some clear embossing powder to give it an enamel look. And then I backed that with some foam tape. So I backed that with vellum, and then I stamped the sentiment and then heat embossed that. There we go. And then for the final one I'm going to show you, the black with the flamingo and the rose gold mixative, I once again used the Playful Messages set along with this scribble heart and arrow. I just thought it would be fun. And I did that with the glitter paper, backed that with some glitter paper, and then I also used some ebony crystal drops on that one as well. But I just thought that was fun. I'm obsessed with you in a non-creepy way. So I thought those would be fun, and I thought the cards that I came up with in the end were a lot of fun. So you could just make your backgrounds. If you want to experiment, have fun, make your backgrounds, and then think about your cards later. And that's pretty much what I did. So if you liked this video, go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Tell me which of these you guys like best. Which background, which card, which whatever. Have you been experimenting? You know, what have you been doing? And I'd love to hear about it. And as always, guys, I do appreciate you stopping by. So thanks.